So there's no human behavior exclusive to marketing. Think about that. No human behavior exclusive to marketing. When you or I go to retail, and it could be any retail, it doesn't need to be grocery, it could be car shopping, it could be online, auto insurance, we remain human. And I don't want to be Captain Obvious here, but 10 out of 10 people remain human. That means all of our needs, all of our wants, all our concerns, desires, accomplishments, aspirations, they all factor into our brand choices. We're not simply consumers that are triggered by product, price, place, promotion. We buy into brands that are an extension or a reflection or even an aspiration of who we are or who we want to become. There's nothing more dehumanizing in modern marketing than the digital journey. And for those who aren't familiar, it goes something like this. Brand X wants to launch D2C or grow D2C, so they brief creative agency Y, hey, we need 50 assets, and we don't know what's going to work, so we want a range of recipe and product focused and lifestyle with product in hand, lifestyle with product in mouth, and we're going to test it all. And 2 weeks later, you learn iOS devices outperform Android devices, learn more call to action outperforms the shop now call to action, mobile outperforms desktop. So you, as the brilliant marketer, think you're going to pull all these learnings together, create one optimized model for acquiring customers. And I would say that is completely false. In fact, if you're a D2C company, just turn off your paid ad spend for a day and watch your sales plummet. This is simply transaction hacking. This is not brand building. There's no story behind it. At the end of the day, moving up and down the demand curve, it's not branding. It's economics 101. Manipulating device technology or hacking your promo plan or using price, you're just maneuvering or shifting demand. You're not building a new demand curve. So what do the best brands have in common? From my opinion, it's one thing. They're all great storytellers. RX Bar, for example, everything from product formulation to packaging design to out-of-home campaign tells one simple, concise story, their brand purpose, no BS. Oatly, for example, the brand tone, voice, and personality of Oatly, that brand feels alive. I mean, they could do something as dull as a job posting, which they've done, and the brand feels alive. Which brings me to my first 2 points. When you tell a good story, maybe you'll hack a transaction. But if you tell a great story, you create a movement. And that's what everyone's here for, right? As a founder or an entrepreneur, your vision that you had at the get-go was a movement that was going to be fueled by people, mainstream masses. From a P&L benefit perspective, your advertising and marketing dollars as a percent of gross revenue come down when you have a movement because you have a portion of the people doing marketing for you. So how do you create a movement? All movements, every single one of them, has two principles behind it: a social mission and a social mission with an opposition. Take war, for example. People go to war because they're fighting for something that's higher than them. Everybody that was recruited or enlisted throughout any war, all ages, right? True or false, right or wrong, corrupt or not, people go to war for social ideals. Nobody goes to war for a capitalist ideal. And in the face of adversity, humans come together, right? To support one another, to strengthen one another, to give hope to one another. And it's because people need people. It's as simple as that. If you want a movement, you need people. And the people need a cohesive factor or a community to come together with. People need people. And the same is true for brands, right? Tom's and their mission, which everybody here probably knows, Stacy's and their celebration of women's rights, right? Or having an enemy, right? When you take a side as a brand, Mercedes, BMW, McDonald's, Burger King, OWYN, Muscle Milk, Gatorade, Body Armor, every single brand that has taken a side has lasted throughout a long period of time. And it's because products solve problems, but brands take sides. As a human, your humanity, you're going to make brand choices based on brands that tell stories and brands that take sides, because again, you're choosing brands based on it being a reflection of who you are or an aspiration. That's what drives brand choice. And you don't want to be in the business of solving problems. You just don't. There will always be somebody behind you who could do it faster, or could do it more effectively, or could do it better than you, and you'll quickly become irrelevant. Don't be in the business of solving problems. So I want to share quickly, the movement that we've created with OWYN, share some data behind it, how we validate it, because I think it will be relevant to how you measure or benchmark if your movement is a movement. So I like to define OWYN by what we aren't, right? We're not dairy, we're not soy, we're not gluten, no fake claims, we're not going to harm your body. We don't have a long list of ingredients you can't pronounce. We're simply only what you need. And we exist. Our purpose, our mission is to make nothing but the truth. For decades, our competition in our category has been misleading consumers with confusing information. And we're here to fight that misinformation with cold, hard facts. So what do I mean by confusion? Well, muscle milk. Is it milk or is it not? That's confusing. 80% of the package screams milk, 5% whispers non-dairy. What is it? No idea. Core Power, 26 grams of protein, 26 grams of sugar. Is that healthy nutrition or is it unhealthy nutrition? That's confusing. OWYN, a vegan RTD SKU. If I have a dairy sensitivity, how do I know this doesn't have trace lactose in it? What kind of transparency is behind their process to let me know that this truly is vegan? Are they properly cleaning their lines after running their dairy product, or are they not? Confusing. So we've decided to authenticate our mission and our purpose of only what you need, truth and transparency, by testing every single ingredient prior to manufacturing and every production lot after manufacturing to validate that we're free of the top 8 food allergies. So that means no dairy, no soy, no gluten, no eggs, no peanuts, no tree nuts, no fish, and no shellfish. And this is extremely important because we are in the middle of a global epidemic. 1 in 3 people in this room are managing a food allergy or sensitivity. That is absolutely crazy. A lot of people don't talk about this. Retail partners have yet to create destination sets for a third of Americans. Strategics have yet to evolve their M&A or their white space innovation strategy to answer this need, and this is not going away. 65% of the world population is considered to have a dairy sensitivity. This is a global epidemic. It's not just US. The consumer diet is evolving. They're looking for free-from options. And so we have about 100K active users in our e-com database, which has been around for about 2 years since the launch of the brand. We regularly poll them, and recently we asked 2 questions. Why do you consume OWYN? In which 27% of respondents reported a medical condition to drive their dietary restrictions. So they have a food allergy, or they have IBS, Crohn's, or colitis, something where they need to remove inflammation from the body to manage a disease. We also asked how important is our top 8 allergen testing protocol, in which 71% said this is very important. So that gap, so you got 27% who need, and then you have the gap to the 71% who want. That's brand equity value. It's brand equity. Those are consumers who have bought the story, bought the mission, evangelized the brand, love the brand, because we're doing something different, a need that we tapped into, a need they were looking for, and we met it. And when you have brand equity value, that spills over into retail performance. So not even a year into most of our retail distribution, we are the #1 brand in our category in the natural channel, outturning #2 by 16% on a dollar VPO. We are the #1 driver of growth in the specialty channel by far, and this is important because specialty is hybrid, natural, and mainstream brands. We're driving more growth in Boost and Ensure and Muscle Milk and Core Power and natural brands like Iconic and Orgain. and we are the #1 vegan protein RTD brand on Amazon. Right? We have built a movement. We validated that it is a movement. We validated the brand equity, and we validated the retail performance. And this is just the beginning. What we've done is we've allowed consumers to elevate to an emotional level, right? They see our brand mission and our brand purpose. They don't see us as a list of product attributes. They see us as a brand. In the case of Body Armor, their brand lovers would view them in emotional territories: performance, domination, winning. If you've never elevated a consumer to an emotional territory, they're only going to view your product as a list of attributes: flavor, taste, function. It's not what you want. You don't want to be in the game of selling products. You want to be in the game of telling stories. So with that said, 2 questions you got to ask yourself. What's your mission, and who is your enemy? You have to have an enemy, and you have to have a mission. Thank you.
Really tight presentation, really understandable and great. And have a seat, Jason.
This guy killed it. Killed it. Wow.
Yes. So let's dip into the adaptation part. Okay, so what's happened to the brand? What are the evolutions that you've made as you've zeroed in on what the social ideal is and what the enemy is?
Great question. I mean, when we first launched the brand, you figure protein, sports nutrition, you go after the fitness community. But we're a data-centric company. We're always using data to validate or refine or pivot. And I would say about a year ago, we realized that we're bigger than sports nutrition. We're not just fitness. We're bringing new consumers into the category. Our consumers are millennial and female. They didn't exist in this protein category before because of the nature of the masculinity of the muscle milks and the core powers of the world. And so we rebranded or repositioned ourselves as a lifestyle brand. And when we did that, that's when we began to really flush out the brand narrative and the story of only what you need and the truth and transparency. And combining that with the data of the epidemic, as I mentioned, that's when we really started to, make those pivots.
We also really started to look at who our customer was. And we started to notice that more and more females who never bought a protein drink before were gravitating to what we stood for, and they were gravitating to our taste. Our liquid was a little bit thinner, so it had a better viscosity. We didn't, as Mark said on stage, we don't add a whole bunch of sucralose or maltitol or things that affect stomachs. So true athletes or people who work out don't want to run around with a toilet paper or anything in their hand, because a lot of that other stuff makes functional bowel movement go nuts. But and we saw that we were being driven by female purchases. So Mark and team were really smart and said, you know what, we're gonna buckle down and figure out how to attract more and more females to the brand.
Yep.
So and how's that play out on pack and in messaging, online and in store?
Look, when I think about brand building, it's larger than a demographic. It's larger than an income range. It's a mindset. And that mindset can transcend across any income range, any demographic, right? And so we don't necessarily tailor the brand toward that. We just play out that brand story. It's about building a story, identifying the enemy, and being authentic with our mission. And whoever might receive that, right? And right now tends to be the female millennial. We play on that, but we're not building it specifically for a particular demographic.
No, I hear you on that, but how do you project it? How do you get that message across?
Well, the only what you need message.
I'm sorry? That message to the consumer that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So how do you fine tune brand? How do you fine tune approach to them?
Yeah, so we are a brand that, digital is a big part of what we do, but when we do digital, it's not the transaction hacking I mentioned, it's the storytelling. We are, I believe, brand presence equals brand preference. So we have a great team at the retail level, building out that story, the only what you need story and mission in store. So when we get secondary placements, we make sure that the message is attached to that, and it's not just extra placements, but there's branding behind it. And so it's a digital to shelf mentality, tying that story throughout whatever we do and bringing it together.
We're also all human, right? And we all have to shop. We buy food to eat, right? If you think about how many people in your company, then think about your friends, then think about your family, and ask the simple question, when you're in the store, do you see people purchasing our products? What do they look like? You might be that weird person, but take a picture. We want to see them. If you ask them a question, we'll send you a free product. A lot of people think you have to spend a lot of money. You got to build these expensive field teams. You actually have a ton of people. If you look at a lot of the young kids that work for you, they have thousands of friends on Facebook and Instagram. Tap into them for free. Tell them how important it is to get that message right. If the message is right, you're going to have a successful brand.
So you're talking about getting an idea of who your consumer is, and even on and I think what you just talked about is a pretty low-cost trick to do it. Everyone who
just
works
have to
for
ask.
you is part of your
You don't ask,
consumer
you never get an answer, right?
Right. So what's the gating factor you're looking for as you start to identify this consumer mass? Though, is it one person? Is it two people? Is it a week's worth of psychographic data? I mean, where does it come from?
Look, we set up our office so that it's almost like a tech company. Everybody is data-centric. I did not grow up data. I didn't look at data when I was building my brands. But these guys are constantly pushing and educating your sales team, your infrastructure, your R&D people. This is who our consumer is. This is the pulse. This is the data. They look at who bought yesterday on Amazon and why they didn't buy tomorrow. They'll call them up. They'll email them. They'll find out what the reasons are, and then they'll implement that back into the system. You don't have to hire consultants to do that. You don't have to hire expensive firms to do that. You just have to do the work.
Okay. I think we got something out of the merchandising ideas to telling that story. What's a classic story that expresses the brand to the consumer? I mean, is that an Instagram post? Is it?
You got to understand where a consumer is on the digital journey. I don't believe on first impression comes a purchase. On first impression becomes awareness, right? And so the story you tell at the top funnel is different from the messaging you might have mid-funnel. So someone who's following us on Instagram likely has explored us, seen a couple assets, maybe went to our website, learned a little bit more about us. So the way that we kind of segment our marketing approach, it really begins with long-form content earlier and upper funnel. It's brand-driven messaging. Mid-funnel, whether it's retargeting or someone in our email program, we start to kind of date the consumer a little bit more, share the benefits, share the reasons to believe in the brand, and then after it tends to be a 2 to 3 week period, that's when they make the purchase. And we know from what Jason mentioned, being a data-centric company, we've invested in a customer data platform, so we know at any given time the repeat on any SKU. We know the repeat life cycle. We know when someone should expect to purchase again, and we could target them if they've lapsed. So there's a lot of tactics you could do to activate your marketing approach once you have that data.
So do you push them with a coupon or
no?
Immediately?
Once you know who your customer is, and then you can find out where they're shopping, it's very interesting. You can have a grocery store here and another one here. And just because you're selling 50 bottles a week here does not mean that the grocery store across the street has that same customer. And people make a huge mistake making an investment of taking time away from where they're really working. And what we've learned is if you activate in the right stores and you use your own team or use guys like Trent from Gotham or Dan from CMG, you can get multiple placements in that store. And even without a promotion, just the fact that they see you every corner they turn, once they get to that cooler, it's not so cluttered. It's like, oh, only what you need's here, only what you need's here. Shit, I got to try this product. And they're not even thinking about the coupon experience. They're thinking about, wow, If they've got this much share of the store, they must be selling.
Yeah. This has got to be a little different from 15 years ago when you start as a founder, right? Where it's just get it in, get it trucked, put it on promo, and we're done. So how do you think about it as an investor? Does that mean you're looking for brands that are super data willing or that already have a good data play?
Look, I think the first step is to make sure that your business is a business, not a hobby. And what we want to make sure is that, as Mark said, that there is a passion and a movement and there's excitement more than just try this and taste it, it's good. What is the purpose behind the brand? And what we love doing now is provide the tools that we didn't have when we first started. We can put guys like Mark in front of a business and really get a bird's eye view as to whether or not this business really has potential. We have the ability to talk to the right retailers and see if it's something that is really white space. And then we can activate that because we have a really strong bench. And one of the things that I find interesting is people raise money and then they hire C and D people who are actually looking for a job versus getting people who weren't looking for a job. And if you have the right people, you'll quickly get the sales you want. If you're still sitting and doing 400, 500, $1 million of sales 2 or 3 years later, either you're not elevating or you don't have the right people. And for us, for Lee and myself, we love our people. We think we have the best people on the planet. And the more brands that we give them, the more excitement and success that we see out of our company.
How'd you guys evolve to such a heavily data-based approach?
Look, it was hard. I mean, that's not who I am. I'm a gut instinct person, and the mistakes get more expensive, and it's your own money, so you kind of want to gut check it. And I think the evolution of being scrappy and then working at publicly traded companies and validating the tools that they have. When you have people on your team that have done both, and you can really understand the difference between just scrap marketing and what Mark's doing now, which is approaching things with data, you could find out pretty quickly that, we should try a different route. And very quickly online, you can test those things, which we couldn't do 15 years ago, and find out if it sells. What we have found out mostly is if it's not working online, don't put it in 300 stores. It's not right. It's not ready, or the pricing's wrong. Check your price elasticity. Check your consumer. Make sure that all that works online before you spend a lot of money on slotting.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I would just add the data-based approach. It's not just simply for acquiring customers, right? Part of the rationale for the database approach is to understand our LTV so that we can understand, are we acquiring customers profitably? A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of founders are not conscious of the contribution margin or the EBITDA, right? And so we want to make sure that what we do as we scale, we're doing it with margin in mind.
So explain that a little further.
So, for example, the attribution of an ad, right? Facebook has an attribution window of 30 days, so, or 28 days, depending on whatever you set it at. So if you acquire a customer and you get a sale on that customer, Facebook is not getting the sales that happen after the 30 days, okay? So as you build out your LTV model, you have to understand the repeats, the repeat frequency, how many repeats, and that becomes the lifetime value. Now, what was your CAC, your cost to acquire that customer within that LTV model? And are you making margin after acquiring that customer when you consider all their repeats? So it's not just an acquisition-based marketing approach using the data, it's also a P&L-minded approach.
Really quick questions about enemies, because this is coming up. It's almost like the Sun Tzu approach, Why do you need this enemy, and does it have to be another brand? Can it be something that's characterized by either characterized by other brands or characterized by society at large?
Opposition begets cohesion. In the face of adversity, humans do come together. If you don't declare an enemy, you're not taking a side. And if you don't take a side, I think you're dead. I don't know one brand that has stood the test of time that hasn't had an enemy. Look at the Coke and Pepsi wars for I don't even know how many years now. McDonald's, Burger King, the water wars, the sports hydration war, auto, right? Any industry, you have to have an opposition.
Doesn't that sort of fly in the face of white space, though?
Explain what you mean.
So white space being, sort of stuff that's never been tapped before. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a brand. It can be a need state.
Well, white space is more of a positioning response, I believe. So you'll find an opportunity through white spacing. You'll find and identify potentially a new need, which allows you to then position yourself or frame yourself against a behavior that's already out there. I would say that's true for 99% of the cases.
So you can turn a behavior into an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is going too long on panels. Someone needs a drink for that. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Terrific.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that bell.